For the last several years, Robert Lawlor has been researching the idea that the basic laws of proportion and geometry, which are inherent in space, are also present in time. This idea was evoked in him by coming across the fact that Hindu philosophy is based on a trinity of consciousness, space, and time. The apex of this trinity is consciousness. The first element is time, and the second is space. Philosophically, the Hindus believe that these three elements are not dissociable from one another. They must be considered as a totality, as a basic trinity. As we know, most religions of the world have a trinity as the base of their ideology. The Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost in Christianity, beauty, truth, and justice in Platonism, Osiris, Horus, and Isis in Egyptian thought. There are many other examples of this. In Hinduism, we know of the Trinity as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. But this is an even older concept of creation, requiring the three elements: consciousness, time, and space. Space is Brahma, consciousness is Vishnu, and time is Shiva. Very interestingly, the entire society of India believe that inherent in time are all the forces and powers of nature. They're locked into patterns that express themselves in time. Those forces are equal to expansion and contraction, like a movement away from center, a movement toward center, and the center itself. We have, then, a sort of physics that's associated with abstract concepts and that have been deified as gods or archetypal characters that embody these abstract elements. In that way, the whole myth of creation is readable on various levels of activities of intelligence. The Hindus respected the power of time and believed that human consciousness, in its activities of concentration, remembrance, and imagination, could actually draw forth the particular aspects and qualities of the forces inherent in time. They organized their society so that these three elements were held in a kind of balance within the thinking and imagining processes of the entire living population. For example, the Brahmins, in their external rituals, worship the masculine principle of Brahma, of which is space. In their hidden and secret rituals, they worship the feminine. This was also true of the commercial caste. There are four basic castes of people in ancient India: the scholarly and priestly caste, the Brahmins. The second is the aristocracy, called the Kshatriya. These are the symbolic rulers of the country who perform the ceremonies of centrality and power. The third caste is the Vaishya, the merchants, bankers, and property owners. And the fourth caste, called the Shudra, are the workers, artists, and the general population as a whole. Of course, the vast majority of people were in the Shudra caste. The Shudra is where all the arts come from, because they are the people of manual dexterity. Each one of these castes, like the Brahmins, worshipped a different aspect of this trinity. The aristocracy and the Shudra worshipped the same. They worshipped externally, they worshipped the feminine, and in secret rituals, they worshipped the phallus or male. There are many people who have studied the caste system who realize that this fourfold division is necessary to hold up civilized populations. Democracy is really a veiled form of this basic system of order, based on the needs which are provided through our vocations. We perpetuate this without realizing it is the basic formation of all societies. These divisions of people into the aptitudes and mentality that predominates their vocational powers was a way to keep the connection with the spiritual world and the forces which surround society in balance. In other words, by extending and emphasizing the characteristics that are basic to the forces which surround us in the universe, The Hindus believed that they were actually forging a bond and a connection between heaven and earth, between sky and land. This equalization of the masculine and feminine powers is represented in time cycles which influence and affect the developments on Earth. We will examine the very ancient prehistoric origins of India and the people who settled in India, remembering that archaeologically, the Indus Valley has revealed human settlements which goes back over 400,000 years. It is one of the oldest archaeologically verified settlements on the face of the Earth. Those findings in caves and cave imagery, which date back to over 400,000 years, shows that people already had musical instruments. They were hunting with bows and arrows, and they had already made the first classic steps towards the fundamentals of civilization. This was evident in the earliest archaeological finds in India. The whole idea that many people refer to India as Mother India may have been in this cycle of time, the place where the remembrance of previous cycles began to resurface and re-emerge as a formative force in the whole development of humanity. The Hindus offer us probably the most exacting of all the prophetic systems of time. It's called the cycles of yugas. Many people have heard of what is called the Kali Yuga, in which we are purportedly well established with our modern society. To understand the Yuga principle, we have to acknowledge a certain experience in our own organism. That there are phases in the development of our organism which are inherent in and associated with a certain passage of time. For example, we reach 7 years of age and our teeth fall out, and we get new teeth. We have nothing to say about that. And by another 7 years, suddenly we have completely reorganized our pelvic region or glandular secretions, and we are now in puberty and have achieved sexual reproductive capacities. The changes just seem to occur in the nature of time. This is a kind of genesis, a process of maturation, and eventually elimination through death that we have nothing to say about. The Hindus extended this cyclic phase to everything in the universe. They said that everything is inherently dominated and created by time. The Kali Yuga is the crone which Shiva holds in his arms as one of his aspects. The triadic nature of his feminine nature takes 3 forms: the virgin, the mother, and the crone. The crone is called Kali, and Kali is the name for the concluding yuga. Let's get the term yuga straight. Yuga is a term which superficially means turning around. It means rotating. The yuga has a variation from just turning, because every sphere that turns throughout the entire universe that is spinning has a specific weight, density, size, and other characteristics that cause that turning to emit a specific sound. The combination of the movement and the sound that it emits is yuga. That's what yuga means. These sounds saturate the expanse of the ether of the universe. When they collide, they interface, they intermix. And when these colliding forces of sonic energy permeating the ether of the universe come together, they form a specific density. That densification of sound is what we call substance. Yuga is a huge term, not only in terms of the measure of time, but in terms of the entire formation of the universe. Kali is mother of the finality of the Yuga system and says, "I am Kali, mother and creator of all these worlds. I have a tendency to destroy them." This is something that we have popularized. It is known that Kali Yuga, the crone of the feminine of Shiva, brings about massive destruction. Let's outline the nature and the form of the Yuga system so we can begin to see it as a totality of the whole nature of time, not just what we're all aware of as the destructive aspect of time, which we all have to experience as individuals at death. The Yuga cycle has been written down for at least 6,000 years in southern India and transmitted through all these time periods. You think of all the upheavals that have occurred in the world, the earth, the climate, and somehow, people hung on to this teaching. The Yuga is a duration that has been known and has been kept secret for a very long period of time. As a matter of fact, anyone who's ever looked it up in most of the books that have been printed on it have looked at a chart that holds an intentional falsification of the duration of the Yugas. The falsification happened when the Aryan culture invaded India. They took over a lot of the knowledge that was held by the Dravidian population who inhabited the Indus Valley at the time of the invasion. They drove the Dravidians south and caused one of the worst genocides in history and prehistory. The duration of the Yuga was kept in Dravidian books, and some of those books wound up in the Theosophical Library in Madras. A French Indologist by the name of Elaine Danilou lived in India for 20 years and became associated with the Nehru family and a lot of the powerful people in India. They said Danilou spoke exquisite Sanskrit, and he also, to the same degree, was able to learn and speak Dravidian. Somehow this knowledge about Elaine's linguistic ability circulated through the sadhus, the wandering saints and holy men of India. One of them came to him and said, "Elaine, it is time that the true durations of the Yugas become known." He gave Elaine the name of the text, but not the actual duration, and so Elaine had to find the text which contained the duration of the Yuga. You don't have to believe that this is the correct duration. There are many people who may disagree with the number we are going to give you, but we will show you the background so you know the source of the information that is to be given. We will be attempting to enter into the way Egypt and India imprinted the key essence of the Yuga system. This is also found in Stonehenge. There are Yuga definitions within the placement of stones and the movement of light in relationship to those monuments. We'll get to all of that as we go along. First, we want to deal with numbers as representative of powers and functions that are inherent in the natural world and in the human psyche. Let's take a look at the reasoning, or we could say the rationale, for the Yuga as a number in time that is explicitly involved in the creation and destruction cycles of the earth. The five-fold system is the progression that is active in form. This is one of the major progressions of numbers that we live with. 5 is the number from which our understanding of the golden mean is generated. This is a method of proportioning the growth of plants and animals. It's the series of numbers that is dominant in the expression of form. There's a wonderful Indian quote on this idea, and it goes, "The divinity in his act of externalizing his being, in the form of creation, becomes so enthralled and bewildered with his own beauty, and in that transmit, he feverishly creates and devours everything that he has created." This is why in the Puranas, the ancient texts of India say that hunger is life, and hunger is death, and hunger is the Lord, and master of these worlds. The eater, while eating, is being eaten. That's really a number philosophy, because with everything that is created, there is a continual devouring. This is going on in our own body every moment. We are constantly in a state in which cells are being composed and cells are being decomposed. It all is happening, fired by the spark of devouring. We all live by devouring the life of other beings and other creatures and other things. That's the nature of the universe that we're dealing with. To deal with it in terms of duration and form, it is necessary to use two languages in parallel, one of words and the other of numbers. The Yugas exist with sets of 10. That group of 10 is called the Kalpa, or a Mahakalpa. It is a group of 10 that defines 4 ages. This can be made into a diagram such as a tetractys. This is one of the diagrams that Pythagoras got from Egypt and said was a sacred diagram. Sacred means permanent or fixed, and he's saying that this tetractys is a permanent design or structure inherent throughout creation. It is a pre-existent configuration which precedes the coming into being of the created or manifest world. A key definitional relationship in Hindu philosophy is the difference between existence and manifestation. Existence is an immaterial configuration that must have been created and conceived prior to the beginning of the manifest creation. Existence is the home of time. Time and the laws of time must pre-exist the laws of space. Space is where form, the formed, and the manifest world occurs. It's not the relationship of time and space that we began with. It's consciousness. It has no hierarchical value. But consciousness does precede the activity of space. In other words, you can conceive of the existence of time without space, but you cannot conceive of the existence of space without time. Here is the tetractys, inverted. It is a series of numbers that starts with 1, then 3, then 6, then 10. This is called the triangular number series, and this can go on indefinitely. It also denotes 4 levels. Each one of these levels is one of the 4 ages that are contained in a kalpa. This is the Maha Kalpa. Now let's talk about the duration of the Yuga. This was once so secret that it was hidden by the Dravidian culture. During the Aryan invasion, it was hidden in books, only in the Dravidian language. Now this is not to say that the invaders didn't gain access to it and keep these secrets for themselves. Maybe the culture that controls most of the world's governments is now using the knowledge of the Yugas for beneficial and favorable moments in time. If so, they are using this information to bring about any of their desired movements in their controls over society. What we're working on now is to extend this as a theory and see if we can verify some of its value as a process of determining long durations of a cycle. We'll give you the number that was held secret for so long. It's a strange number, but we will have time in this series to give you good sampling of why one could conjecture that this is a very valid piece of genuine Gnostic awareness. With this tetractys, we can see that the 4 ages are comprised of 10 yugas. The duration of one yuga is 6,048 years. If you know the measurements of the Earth, this number is very important. It's part of a series of numbers that begins with 54, which is 2 times the cube of 3. 54, 108, 216, 432, 864, and so on. 864 times 7 equals 6,048, which is the duration of one yuga. Many of the numbers in this series represent very essential measurements of the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon. For example, if we just multiply one of these numbers, 216, by 10, we can find 2,160, which is the diameter of the Moon in miles. That's a measurement of space. It's also the duration of time that it takes the Sun in its precessional cycle to pass through one sign of the zodiac. That's 2,160 years. Unlike the metric system, the English miles system is directly related to the way the ancients measured space. The inch, the foot, the yard, and the mile are all based on ancient measuring systems with deeply sacred roots. Every number in this series are multiples of 6, 3, and 9, which are all multiples of 3. They are creative, and they are the numbers which are found by the people who developed the Yuga philosophy as the key to the solution, as well as the composition of the universe. The Sun is also dominated by these numbers. Its movements around the zodiac, its relationship to the Earth, are denoted by numbers which are involved with 3 and 6. 7 is the number that dominates the cycles of the Moon. Within this, we have the combined interaction of the greatest forces on Earth. The forces that create all the tides, not only in the ocean, but the flowing of our blood through our body. Everything that moves tidally moves in combination with the effects of the Sun and Moon. And these are systems based on 7 and 6. By understanding the Yuga cycles, we can see that time, like space, has dimensional qualities. In our next episode, we will further our examination of the Yuga cycles and the ramifications of these cycles on human history.